Some view the mystical as a falsehood born out of fantastical thinking, but you know that they have this backwards. The physical self is an illusion, and only the most disciplined can tap into their true spiritual self. Today, we are discussing the way of the Astral Self Monk Subclass from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today we are talking about the way of the Astral Self Monk. And a big shout out to Happy Gamer 500 for suggesting this subclass down in the comments. Be sure to give me suggestions down there to let me know what subclasses you want to see. I am going to start expanding beyond Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, so if there's any subclass that you would like to see, let me know down in the comments below. To give a quick overview of it, I know that it was a very brief description I gave of it in the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything review that I did, and compared this to the ancient one from Doctor Strange. But to go a bit more in depth on an overview of, before we get into the level by level class features, I wanted to talk about how I really do like this subclass. And the thing I like about it is that there's a very clear growth that happens with this subclass. And what I mean by that, because obviously every subclass has growth, you gain levels and you gain more power. But at third level, you gain the ability to summon these spectral arms out of yourself, and they can do lots of cool stuff and attack and knock people back. And then you grow to the visage and so on and so forth. And you're manifesting different parts of your astral self until you can finally summon your full astral being onto the material plane. So that's what I like about it, is that it's clear that you have an end goal in mind with this subclass. Your end goal is to be disciplined enough to summon your full astral self. But it's a process, starting with arms, visage, and so I like that story that can be told through leveling. You can really hone in on the flavor of this subclass and tell that story of working hard towards this end goal as you gain levels in your monk class and hit those milestones in the subclass to gain the new abilities. It's very much kind of like the Circle of Stars Druid, where you can tell that story of how you're progressing. And what's kind of nice about this one, though, is that with the Circle of Stars Druid, you're kind of reliant on the Dungeon Master to provide you with those opportunities. And with this one, you don't really need that. It's all internal and discipline and summoning forth your true self. So it can be this very compelling personal story that your character is working towards, which I really, really like. Okay, so let's get into the class features. Now, at third level, when you pick this subclass, you obviously gain the ability to summon the arms of the astral self. As a bonus action, you can spend 1 key point to summon forth these arms. And when you do, each creature within 10 feet of you must save on a dexterity saving throw or take 2 rolls of your martial arts die in force damage, which is pretty cool. And then for the next 10 minutes, these spectral arms hover above your shoulders and allow you to do some really cool things with them. And they only disappear if you are incapacitated or you die. So if you're knocked out in combat, then the spectral arms will go away until you're brought back up. You spend another key point, use a bonus action, and you can get them back. But the things that you can do with them, first off, obviously you can make unarmed strikes with them. But when you make your unarmed strike, you gain an extra 5 feet of reach. And additionally, all the unarmed strike attacks that you make with these spectral arms use your wisdom modifier instead of your strength or dexterity score for both the attack roll and the damage modifier, which is great. It allows you to really focus in on wisdom as a monk and gain that kind of, it is kind of a trope, but that truly wise, discipline-centered self whose discipline allows them to overcome any obstacles with their dexterity or their strength. They are above the physical restraints of the material plane and can transcend that through their wisdom. So I really like that. And from a mechanical standpoint, it's pretty cool to be able to not have to worry about either of those as a melee fighter. Obviously, for the first 2 levels, you kind of have to contend with it. But once you hit third level, you can forget about strength and dexterity, because also when your spectral arms are there, you can use your wisdom modifier for strength ability checks and saving throws. So in athletics check, you can use your wisdom modifier instead of your strength modifier. And before we move on, if you are enjoying this video, please be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. And if you want to talk to me about any of this or anything related to D&D, feel free to come by and hang out on the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/thegeekpantheon. I stream every Sunday and Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central and Saturdays at 7 a.m. So come by, hang out. We would love to have you. Then at 6th level, you get the Visage of the Astral Self. So once again, as a bonus action, you can spend 1 key point, or you can spend a key point as part of the bonus action to summon the arms as well. So you can take a bonus action, spend 2 key points, and gain your 3rd level ability and your 6th level ability. And the Visage looks like a helmet or face covering of your choice. You get to determine what it looks like. Same with the arms, I forgot to mention. You get to determine what those look like as well. And when this is on you, once again, for 10 minutes, all the same constraints apply as with the arms. If you're incapacitated or die, it goes away early. But when it's present and on you, you gain the ability to see in darkness up to 120 feet, both magical and non-magical darkness, which can be pretty potent and life-saving. You gain advantage on all insight and charisma checks because your eyes and your face have transcended the material plane and you can see right through people apparently. And lastly, when you speak, you can pick a single creature that you can see within 60 feet of you and speak to where only they can hear you, or you can amplify your voice to where every creature within 600 feet can hear you as well. So yeah, we've got the arms and all the cool stuff that they can do using your wisdom to overcome things. And then now you have your Visage being taken over by your astral self, allowing your eyes to be magically augmented with the advantage on insight and seeing through darkness. Your voice, your mouth can be manipulated with your astral self, which I really like. And yeah, I think it's a cool progression. Like I said, getting the Visage involved. I do miss out on one of my favorite things about this subclass is what it does at 3rd level with allowing you to use your wisdom modifier in place of strength and dexterity for attacks. And from a balance standpoint, I don't know how well this would work because I'm not a game designer. So I would need to get this on a table to see if it truly breaks something. But I would have liked to have seen at least one aspect of that brought into the Visage as well. Maybe not all charisma checks, maybe not persuasion, intimidation, performance, all that stuff. Maybe don't allow all of that, but maybe just for intimidation, since you are getting advantage on it. But I think you could take that away and say you can use your wisdom modifier for intimidation checks. I think that would be a really cool way to continue to bring in this idea that your physical self, the self that you are on the material plane, does not matter. Your wisdom transcends and allows you to tap into your true self. And so more and more skills start getting brought in that allow you to use your wisdom modifier for them, as opposed to your charisma modifier, strength modifier, so on and so forth. And because you're waiting until 6th level to get this, it's not like you can straight out of the gate be like, okay, I want to be the face of the party in 6 levels. Like, it's not, you could plan for it, but then unless there's another face of the party, you're not going to have a face of the party for the first 6 levels. And if there is another face of the party, then why are you so worried about it? And so, yeah, I would have liked to have seen something similar to that brought into the Visage and the rest of the class features as we're going on, because I really like that. I really like that idea of your wisdom transcending the material plane, and I wish we could have seen something similar at this level as well. Okay, then at 11th level, you get the body of the astral self. Now this one's kind of cool because all you have to do to activate this is summon your arms and your Visage. There's no additional actions, no additional key points required. If you summon both with the 2 key points on a bonus action, this also connects both, as the idea is you're connecting your Visage and your arms. It appears like a suit of armor, but once again, you get to determine what it looks like. And while this doesn't explicitly state that it has the same constraints of like 10 minutes unless you die, I think it's because it's contingent on the other things being present. So obviously, if you're incapacitated, this would go away because you no longer have the other ones activated. But anyway, what you get when you activate this is you gain the ability to, it's called deflect damage, but you're reducing incoming damage. So when you're taking damage that's fire, cold, acid, force, lightning, or thunder, then you can use your reaction to reduce it by 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. minimum one, obviously. But if you're this point and you have a negative wisdom modifier with this subclass, I'm fine with suboptimal play, but I feel like you're actively working against the system at that point. But anyway, so this is really cool. It's a really good get out of jail free. Although once you're up at 11th level, a 1d10 is going to be very situationally beneficial, I guess. If you're really low on hit points, or the amount of damage that you took is just going to put you over your max, then you can use it. Because it does say when you take damage, not when you are hit by an attack. So my reading of that indicates that after you have heard what the damage is, then you can make the determination on whether or not you want to use it. So I do like that aspect of it, but I just think at this level, you're going to start seeing things do so much damage that a lot of times a 1d10 isn't going to make a huge amount of difference. And obviously, as you get higher and higher levels, it's going to become less and less relevant, but it can be a really good oh crap button if you're about to be like just 2 points past passing out, past being incapacitated. You can use this, roll it, and hopefully you'll be able to save yourself. And then additionally, you have empowered arms, which means that when you deal an unarmed strike, when you deal damage with an attack from one of your spectral arms, you get to deal extra damage equal to your martial arts die. So that's pretty cool. Just a nice little boost in power at the 11th level, which is pretty standard for a lot of these subclasses. So yeah, I like it. And then finally, you have the Awakened Astral Self at 17th level. When you get this ability, you can, as a bonus action, spend 5 key points to summon your arms, visage, and body all at once, but you gain some additional benefits for being awakened, because obviously at 11th level you can do that for 2 key points. The additional things that you get, obviously the awakened self does have the same constraints. 10 minutes if you are knocked out or die, it goes away early, but you gain +2 to your armor class when this is active, and you gain the ability that when you use your extra attack feature to perform an unarmed strike, you can then attack 3 times instead of twice if you're using the astral arms, your astral arms. So for this one being the capstone ability of this subclass, I do find it to be kind of a mixed bag, simply because I think the attacking 3 times instead of twice can be pretty potent. Don't get me wrong, and that can really bump up your damage output as a monk. The +2 AC just seems fine. It seems okay. Yeah, I guess just with how cool everything is leading up to this, with the spectral arms and using wisdom instead of strength or dexterity, and having being able to see in magical darkness for up to 120 feet, and being able to speak to a single person, and then getting the ability to reduce damage that's incoming, and it just kind of +2 to AC. Okay, so let's talk about playing this subclass, getting it on a table, and primarily talking about it from a flavor standpoint. So the first thing, and I kind of alluded to it in the overview, this subclass really screams student to me until you hit like 17th level and you are this awakened astral self and you've earned that capstone ability. But this one really speaks to becoming more and more learned over time, and you hit 3rd level and all of a sudden you can summon these arms, and then you work harder and you hit 6th level and you can summon this visage, and then you work a little bit harder and you hit 11th level, and so on and so forth. So I like the way that they've flavored each step, and I would love to see that incorporated into the character behind the subclass of being this student, and either through external or internal means, like meditating and trying to tap into your true inner astral self, and bringing them forth more and more, trying to draw this true self out of you and into the physical plane. And if I were playing the subclass, I would look ahead to the next thing that I'm going to get. Like maybe like I've hit 3rd level, I have my arms. Maybe when I hit 4th or 5th level, I start hinting that like when I summon forth my spectral arms, you also see this ghostly face come over me for just a brief moment, just hinting at that I'm learning to tap into my true visage of my true self. And then the body, you see armor flash up and then dissipate into my arms and visage for a brief moment when you're at 10th level. Doing things like that to show that your character is actively working towards earning the next thing, I think is a really cool way to play this and to flavor it when you're controlling them at the table. Additionally, because at 3rd level, I've talked about this aspect a lot during the video, but because at 3rd level, you gain the ability to use your wisdom score instead of strength or dexterity for your martial attacks, for your unarmed strikes. I think playing this character is that very calm, cool, collected frontline fighter monk, the one that is very stoic and is not shook by anything, and when they're fighting it just seems to flow and come out of them, and they're not shaken by the big hulking troll coming down on them, because it's their wisdom. They are wise, they understand what's going on, they have insight, they have a certain level of perception about the situation, and they know it's going to be okay. And so playing that very wise, thoughtful monk, even in the heat of battle, because you're using your wisdom instead of these other scores to fuel your attacks, I think marries the mechanics and the flavor really well. And you could even play this, once again, as something that you grow into over time. Maybe if you want to get really wild with it and have your mechanics and your flavor go hand in hand like chocolate and peanut butter, then I would, because presumably in the first 2 levels, you have a decent strength or dexterity score. Those aren't your dump stats to where you're not effective at all in combat until you hit your 3rd level. You probably have a really good wisdom score and a decent dexterity or strength score. And what I would do is play into that. Play into learning to tap into your wisdom. And you summon these astral arms and you're fighting. Because the language is you can, not you do use your wisdom. So maybe your monk slips up real quick and they start frantically fighting off, and their concentration kind of wavers. Maybe have the spectral arm still doing the attacks, but you use your dexterity score instead to reflect that you're falling back on your physical way of thinking, that you're tripping up. This would be a phenomenal class to have kind of a mentor that can teach you and observe you in combat and reprimand you when you're like, I saw you use strength, and obviously not in that language. I saw you use your strength score on that attack. But playing into that through the mechanics, I think can be a really cool way of doing it. Because once again, it's not optimal play, but it's interesting play. It's interesting from a storytelling standpoint. So yeah, I think that would be a really cool way to play this subclass. And then when we talk about different party configurations that this subclass can slot really well into, obviously going back to the Circle of Druids video that I did not too long ago, I spoke about this idea of a party made up of like artifact hunters / treasure seekers that are frequently coming into contact with ancient archives of knowledge. And this could work really well for this subclass if you're going with the more external route of you're finding more and more ancient texts of this monastic order that has long died out, and you are trying to carry on be the final bastion of this monastic order that is the Astral Self. And so you're hunting down these texts and everything. And so if you're running alongside a Circle of the Stars Druid, you both can be running along with like an Arcane Domain Cleric and anybody else that's interested in learning ancient knowledge could work really well. Additionally, because you're tapping into, it's not explicitly saying that you're tapping into like the ethereal plane or any other specific plane, but any of the classes that deal with planar activity like the Horizon Walker Ranger or the Oath of the Watcher's Paladin could work really well with this subclass, because you're dealing with, potentially you could play it like you're dealing with planar activity. You're tapping into your true self that exists on the ethereal plane. And that's an interesting way that you can flavor it to make it more grounded in a D&D world almost. Like spiritualism you could have in your particular world tied to the ethereal plane. And that's where our spirits, our souls reside. And you're trying to draw forth your true self from the ethereal plane because there's lots of stuff that lets your physical form go to the ethereal plane, but you're trying to do the inverse and pull your ethereal self into the physical plane and attach it to yourself, obviously. And so I think that could also be a really cool party for this subclass to work it. And how to be a good dungeon master for a Way of the Astral Self Monk, outside of just being a good dungeon master in general. So this one, it depends a lot on how the player wants to play this character, because if it's all internal and they're trying to unlock their true self, then maybe having an NPC who's skeptical and can eventually be brought around by their show of discipline and power would be a really interesting thing to incorporate into your story. Or if they're going with the more external kind of ancient monastic order, they need to learn from a mentor or through texts, obviously incorporating that into the story, especially if they have a mentor right after they hit like 6th level or 11th level, right after they've unlocked the next cool thing. You can have that mentor go missing. You could have them get kidnapped. You could do a lot of things with that mentor and have them frantically try to get them back by 11th level or 17th level whenever their next cool thing unlocks. And or maybe their mentor dies and they have to go seeking a new mentor. That could also be a really interesting story to tell. But this one, unlike a lot of other subclasses, has a lot of wiggle room in how you can play it. If your player is playing with the idea of the ethereal plane and your true spirit resides there, maybe it does say in the class description that they get to determine the appearance of all of this, but you could talk to the player and be like, okay, I have an interesting idea, and it's not going to affect you mechanically at all. But from a flavor standpoint, I'd like to tweak the appearance from time to time of your spectral arms and stuff. And if they say okay, then maybe they grab the wrong spirit. Maybe they, like, especially early on at 3rd and 6th level, maybe they reach out and it's a human monk, and they reach out and all of a sudden these like lizard draconic arms spring forth from their back in an astral form and start slashing around. It's like, okay, that's not normal. And then the next time it's tentacles that show up. Not the next time, but the next time you want to do something like this. That would be a really fun way to show that, like, you haven't quite got it down yet. You haven't quite like got it perfected and consistent yet. And then by the time they hit like 11th level, maybe once have them like their full body of the astral self look like something wonky, but then after that point they have it pretty well unlocked by the time they're hitting like 12th or 13th level. But, and this is the first time I've done one of these in one of the subclass videos, I think, I'm going to tell you what not to do as a dungeon master with this subclass, because the temptation is there, because this one has coded into it a very clear, you are drawing on power from another place in order to fuel your abilities, almost like a cleric or a warlock. But don't ever put this subclass in a situation where they can't access their astral self. Don't do that. If it's like an anti-magic zone, or, oh, this time of year, this one night, our plane is cut off from the ethereal plane, you can't do that. If it's a situation where there's no combat, then fine. Like, do that, make it seem really scary, like you try, but nothing happens. But if it's in combat, and you try to surprise your player with this, they're not going to find it interesting. They're not going to find it compelling. They're going to be bummed because they can't do the stuff that their subclass does. It's like telling a champion fighter, well, on this one day, you can't crit on a 19. It's like, well, why not? That's the whole reason I took this subclass. So yeah, don't do that. When I was reading through it, that initial like spark of an idea of like, oh, it would be interesting, but no, you can't do that. You can't take away everybody's all of their subclass abilities in one go. So yeah, the tweaking with the appearance is how you can play with it, but don't mess with the mechanics, because there's a lot of classes that you wouldn't do that with. And every table is different. Sometimes you have a player who would find that really interesting and really compelling. I played a character one time that I said had a horrifying fear of blood. He was a fighter who used a really big sword, and every time I landed a hit, the DM had me roll a D100, and on a 25 or less, I fainted for the remainder of the round. But I'm okay with that. I think that kind of stuff is fun and wacky, but it never took me fully out of the fight, is the difference. Something like this, if you do it for a round, like, maybe if your player's on board, but if it's something that's going to affect them for the entire encounter, I don't know. But anyway, let me know what you all thought down in the comments below of this subclass. Let me know what subclasses I need to look into in the future. And yeah, let me know what you thought. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It would help out so much, and I will see you next time.